The glass shattered against the wall, missing Sandra's head by inches. She didn't flinch anymore. She'd learned not to. "Look at you." David's voice echoed through their expensive living room, the one Sandra had scrubbed floors to help pay for 5 years ago. Standing there like a mountain. "You disgust me. You hear me? You make me sick to look at." Sandra's hands trembled as she picked up the photograph that had fallen, the one from their wedding day 12 years ago. She was smiling in it, wearing a simple white dress, holding David's hand. He was thin then, hungry, desperate. She remembered how his ribs showed through his shirt. "David, please." The children. The children. What? He stepped closer, his expensive cologne mixing with the smell of whiskey on his breath. "The children are ashamed of you too. I see how they look at you when I take them to school. Their friends' mothers are slim, beautiful. Then there's you sweating through your blouse before 9 a.m. 9-year-old Amma appeared at the top of the stairs, her small face wet with tears. "Daddy, stop shouting at Mommy." "Get back to your room," David roared. "Now!" The little girl ran, her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Sandra heard the door slam, heard her daughter's muffled sobs. Something inside her cracked. Not for the first time, but deeper this time. David grabbed his car keys from the marble counter. "I'm going out. Don't wait up. Actually, don't even be here when I get back. The sight of you ruins my appetite." The door slammed. The engine roared to life. Red taillights disappeared down their street in East Legon, one of Accra's wealthiest neighborhoods. Sandra stood in the silence, holding a broken picture frame, wondering how love could rot so completely. But this wasn't where their story began. No, their beginning was beautiful. Painfully beautiful. 12 years earlier, Sandra was 23 years old, working as a nurse's assistant at Ridge Hospital. She wasn't the slim kind of beautiful that magazines celebrated, but she had something rarer. A smile that made strangers feel safe, hands that were always ready to help, and a heart that refused to see anyone as beyond saving. Her apartment in Nima was a single room with a shared bathroom down the hall. The ceiling fan wobbled dangerously when it worked, which wasn't often. She woke every morning at 4:30 to prepare porridge to sell before her hospital shift. Her mother called it suffering, but Sandra called it building. One day, she'd tell her reflection as she stirred the pot in the communal kitchen, "Things will be different." She met David at a community health fair the hospital organized. At first, she didn't even realize he was struggling. He was standing at the back, watching the food table from a distance. Not moving closer, just watching. Sandra noticed because he'd been standing in the same spot for 20 minutes, staring at the jollof rice like it was a mirage. She walked over with a pamphlet about malaria prevention. "Hello, would you like some information about—" His stomach growled. Loudly. So loud that people nearby turned to look. His face went red with shame. Sandra's heart squeezed. She looked at him properly now. His shirt had been expensive once. She could tell from the fabric, but it was faded and the collar was frayed. His trousers hung loose on his frame, held up with a belt that had extra holes punched into it, like he'd been losing weight for months. His shoes were worn through at the soles, but it was his eyes that stopped her. Educated eyes, tired eyes, eyes that had seen better days. "The food is for everyone," she said gently. "Have you eaten?" "I'm fine." His voice was educated, proper English, but weak. "When did you last eat? And please don't lie to me." He looked down at his worn shoes. "Thursday morning. My friend's mother made breakfast before I left his house. I didn't want to. I couldn't ask for lunch, too. They've been so kind already. Today is Saturday. I know what day it is." His jaw tightened, pride and hunger warred in his eyes. "Look, I'm not begging. I just came because it was free to attend, and I thought maybe I could learn something useful for when I finally get a job. Sandra grabbed his wrist without thinking. His arm was so thin, just bone and sinew. Come with me. Right now. I don't need charity. Good, because I'm not offering charity. The food is for attendees. You're attending. Come on before it's all gone. She led him to the staff area where they'd set up extra food. She loaded a plate with rice, chicken, plantain, contomaire stew, and salad. More than anyone should take, but she didn't care. When she handed it to him, his hands shook so badly the plate rattled. "Sit down before you drop it," she said. He sat on a plastic chair and just stared at the food for a moment, like he couldn't believe it was real. Then he picked up the fork and tried to eat slowly, maintaining some kind of dignity. But his hands trembled. He dropped the fork once, twice. The third time, tears started running down his face as he chewed. Sandra sat beside him and waited. She'd learned in nursing that sometimes silence was the greatest kindness. When he finished, he stared at the empty plate. His shoulders shook. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I'm not usually like this." "Like what?" "Pathetic." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "I graduated first-class honors, University of Ghana. Accounting. I had scholarships, awards. My professors said I was going to be something special." His voice cracked. 2 years ago, my family disowned me because I refused an arranged marriage. Since then, I've applied to 147 jobs. 147 rejections. Where are you staying? My friend from university, he lets me sleep on his couch sometimes. When he can. When he doesn't have company or when his landlord isn't around. Other times, he trailed off. Other times what? I walk around all night, the 24-hour shops, bus stations, anywhere with lights and people so I don't look suspicious. Then I find somewhere to sit when the sun comes up. He laughed bitterly. You know what the worst part is? I'm so tired all the time, not just hungry, tired. My brain doesn't work like it used to. I used to solve complex equations in my head for fun. Now I can barely remember what day it is. Sandra reached over and took his hand. What's your name? David. David Mensa. Well, David Mensa, first-class honors. I'm going to tell you something my grandmother told me before she died. She squeezed his rough, calloused hands. She said, the seed doesn't choose where it falls, but it can choose whether to grow. You fell on hard ground. But you're not dead. You're just waiting. Waiting for what? His voice was so tired. For someone to water you. She smiled. I'm pretty good at making things grow. He stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. You don't even know me. I could be anyone. I know you're educated. I know you've survived 2 years of hell and you're still here, still trying. That's not weakness, David. That's strength. She paused. Let me help you. Why? Why would you help a stranger? Sandra thought about her grandmother, about her own struggles, about every person who'd helped her when she had nothing. Because someone helped me once, and because I think you're going to be someone important one day. And when you are, you'll remember what rock bottom felt like, and you'll help someone else. David's face crumbled. He covered it with his hands, his whole body shaking with silent sobs. I just want to be normal again. I want to wake up and not feel dizzy from hunger. I want to wear clean clothes. I want to sleep in a real bed for more than one night. I want to stop feeling like I'm invisible. Sandra made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Where are you staying tonight? I don't know yet. Maybe my friend's place if he's not busy. No, you're coming home with me. She stood up. I have a small room in Nima, nothing fancy, but there's a bed and a shower. You can clean up, rest properly. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step. I can't accept that. I don't even know you. Well, now you do. I'm Sandra Osei. I'm 23. I work as a nurse's assistant, and I don't take no for an answer when I'm trying to help someone. She held out her hand. Come on, David. Let me help you. He looked at her extended hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he took it and stood up. Thank you, he whispered. I don't know how to repay this. You don't have to repay it. You just have to keep trying. That's enough. Over the next 3 months, Sandra became David's anchor to the world. Every morning she woke him at 5 with a cup of tea and 2 slices of bread with butter. Small things, but to David they were miracles. She connected him with her friend Akosa, who owned a small provision shop and needed someone to help with her accounts. The pay was almost nothing, but it gave David something he'd lost: purpose. You're too good to me, David said one evening as they sat outside Sandra's room, watching the sunset paint the Nima skyline orange and gold. I don't deserve this. Stop saying that. Sandra's voice had an edge to it, sharp, frustrated. You keep talking like you're some kind of burden. You're not. You're a human being who hit a rough patch, that's all. A rough patch that lasted 2 years. So what? Some people's rough patches last 10 years, 20. Some people never get out. She turned to face him. You know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who's still fighting, still waking up every day, still trying. That's not weakness, David. That's everything. He reached for her hand. Why do you believe in me so much? Because someone has to. She squeezed his fingers. And because I've seen you with Akosua's accounts. You fixed 3 years of mess in 2 weeks. You found money she didn't even know she had. That's not luck. That's skill. That's who you are when you're not drowning. David pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. The evening breeze carried the smell of fried plantain from a neighbor's kitchen. Somewhere a child laughed. Life continued around them, messy and beautiful. I'm falling in love with you, he whispered. Is that crazy? Is it too soon? Sandra's breath caught. Joy flooded through her, warm and terrifying. Probably. But I don't care. I'm falling too. They kissed as the sun disappeared, and in that moment everything felt possible. 2 months later, everything changed. Akosa's cousin worked at a mid-sized accounting firm in Osu. She'd heard about the young man who'd transformed her cousin's chaotic books into something beautiful. She called Sandra directly. This friend of yours, the accountant, is he looking for work? Sandra's heart jumped. Yes, he is. Tell him to come to my office Monday morning, 9 sharp. I can't promise anything, but we need someone good. If he's as brilliant as Akosua says, we'll talk. When Sandra told David, he froze. Actually froze, spoon halfway to his mouth, porridge dripping back into the bowl. What did you say? Interview. Monday, 9 a.m. Sandra was bouncing on her toes, unable to contain her excitement. This is it, David. This is your chance. But David's face didn't light up. Instead, fear crawled across it. Raw, paralyzing fear. No, I can't. What if I mess it up? What if I freeze? What if my brain doesn't work right and I say something stupid? David, you don't understand. He stood up so fast the chair fell backward. I've been to 147 interviews. 147 times I walked in thinking, this is it. And 147 times I walked out feeling like garbage. I can't do it again. I can't. Sandra grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. Firm, uncompromising. Listen to me. You are going to that interview. You know why? Because you're not the same person who went to those other interviews. That person was starving, desperate, barely holding on. You're different now. You're fed. You're rested. You're sharp again." Her voice softened. "And you're not going alone. I'm taking you there. I'm walking you to that door. And when you come out, whatever happens, I'll be waiting." Tears streamed down his face. "What if I fail? Then we try again, and again, and again." She kissed his forehead. "I'm not going anywhere, David. You're stuck with me." Monday morning arrived too fast. Sandra used almost all her savings to buy David a proper interview outfit. Dark trousers, a white shirt, black shoes that actually fit. When he put it on, he stared at himself in her small, cracked mirror like he was seeing a stranger. "I look professional," Sandra finished. "You look like someone they'd be stupid not to hire." They took 2 trotros to Osu. Sandra held his hand the entire way, feeling how badly it trembled. When they arrived at the building, David stopped walking. "I can't breathe." "Yes, you can. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Come on, with me." She demonstrated, exaggerating the breaths until he laughed nervously. Better. Laughter was better than panic. "You've got this. You know more about accounting than anyone in that building. You just have to show them." "What if?" "No what ifs, just facts. Fact. You're brilliant. Fact, you're prepared. Fact, I believe in you." She straightened his collar one last time. "Now go in there and remind them why first-class honors means something." He kissed her quickly, desperately, then turned and walked into the building. Sandra found a bench across the street and sat down to wait. And pray. God, she prayed harder than she'd ever prayed for anything in her life. 2 hours later, David emerged. Sandra couldn't read his face. He walked toward her slowly, expression blank. Her heart sank. Then he smiled. Not a big smile. A shocked, disbelieving, trembling smile. "They offered me the job," Sandra screamed. Actually screamed right there
Yes,
on the
I
street in
did it!
Osu. She ran to him and jumped into his arms, nearly knocking them both over. People stared. She didn't care. I told you. I told you." She was laughing and crying at the same time. "When do you start?" "Next Monday. The salary is—" He named a figure that made Sandra's eyes go wide. It wasn't huge, but it was more than both of them currently made combined. "Sandra, we're going to be okay. We're actually going to be okay. We were always going to be okay," she said, kissing him. "I knew it. I always knew it." That evening they celebrated with a bottle of Malta and some fried yam from the woman who sold food near Sandra's apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it tasted like victory, like hope made edible. "Marry me," David said suddenly. Sandra choked on her Malta. "What?" "Marry me. I don't have a ring, I don't have savings, I haven't even started the job yet, but I know, Sandra. I know you're the person I want beside me for everything that comes next." He took both her hands. "You saved my life. Let me spend the rest of it making sure you never regret it." Sandra's vision blurred with tears. Happy tears, overwhelmed tears. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Then yes. Yes, you fool. Yes." They married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the Assemblies of God Church near her apartment. Sandra wore a dress her friend Akosua sewed for her, light blue with white lace. David wore the interview suit. There were maybe 30 people there, mostly Sandra's friends and relatives. David's family didn't come. Sandra's mother pulled her aside before the ceremony. "My daughter, are you sure about this?" "Yes, Mama. He's only been working for 3 months. That's not stability." "He's been surviving for 2 years. That's more stability than most people have." Sandra squeezed her mother's hand. "I know what I'm doing." Her mother sighed, then pulled a small velvet pouch from her purse. "This was your grandmother's. She wanted you to have it on your wedding day." Inside was a gold bracelet. delicate and old, with tiny engravings of flowers. Sandra's breath caught. "Mama, I can't take this. It's too valuable." "You can and you will." Your grandmother said, "Give this to Sandra when she marries, and tell her love is measured not in jewelry, but in sacrifice." Her mother's eyes were wet. She also said, "Make sure he remembers what she sacrificed. Make sure he never forgets." Sandra slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. She would wear it every day for the next 5 years, even as everything fell apart, especially then. Their first home together was still Sandra's single room. David moved in with one bag of clothes and his accounting books. The space was so small they could barely walk around the bed. The bathroom was shared with 6 other families. Sometimes there was no water. Sometimes there was no electricity. But God, they were happy. Sandra continued waking at 4:30 to make porridge to sell before her hospital shift. David left for work at 6:30, taking 2 trotros to get to Osu. They were both exhausted by evening, but they'd lie on their thin mattress, fan whirring overhead, talking about the future. "One day," David would say, holding her close, his fingers tracing patterns on her arm, "I'm going to buy you a house. A real house with a kitchen that doesn't flood and a bathroom that's just ours. I don't need a big house, but I need to give you one. You gave me everything, Sandra. Let me give you something back. You already do. Every day you do." 1 year into their marriage, Sandra discovered she was pregnant. She told David while he was studying for his professional accounting exams at their small table, the only table they owned. The lamp flickered. Outside, someone's generator roared to life. "David." "Hmm?" He didn't look up, pencil scratching across paper, his concentration absolute. "David, I need to tell you something." Something in her voice made him put down the pencil. He turned to face her, and she took his hand. Placing it on her still flat stomach, his eyes went wide. "We're going to have a baby." For a moment he just stared. Then panic flooded his face. Real, raw panic. "Sandra, we can barely feed ourselves. The room is too small. We don't have money for a baby. How are we going to—" "We'll manage. We always do." "No." He stood up, pacing their tiny room in exactly 3 steps before hitting the wall. "No, you don't understand. I'm supposed to provide. I'm supposed to take care of you. This baby needs things. A crib, clothes, diapers, hospital bills. And I can't even—" His voice cracked. Frustration, shame, fear all mixed together. What kind of father can't even give his child a proper home? "Stop." Sandra stood and grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. Not gentle, firm, almost angry. "Listen to me right now. We are taking care of each other. That's what marriage is. You think I'm doing this alone? You think I don't see how hard you work, how you skip lunch to save money, how you study until your eyes are bloodshot? It's not enough. It's everything." She placed his hand back on her stomach. "This baby is going to have 2 parents who know how to fight, who know how to survive, who know that love isn't about what you have in your pocket, it's about what you give from your heart." Her voice softened, warmth replacing the fire. "That's more than most children get, David. That's a gift." David pulled her close, his whole body shaking with silent sobs. "I'm so scared, Sandra. What if I fail? What if I can't protect you both?" "You won't fail. We won't let you." She held him tighter. "And hey, being scared just means you care. That makes you a good father already." They stood there in their tiny room, holding each other while the generator hummed outside, and the future grew inside her, terrifying and beautiful and inevitable. 9 months later, Amma came into the world screaming. Sandra had never heard a more beautiful sound. David held his daughter for the first time in the hospital corridor because they couldn't afford a private room, his hands trembling worse than they had on his interview day. She's so tiny, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. Look at her fingers. They're perfect. Sandra watched from the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant. She has your nose. She has your eyes. Thank God. He kissed the baby's forehead. I promise you, little one, I promise you'll never know what hunger feels like. You'll never walk around at night with nowhere to go. I'm going to give you everything. He looked at Sandra. I'm going to give you both everything. And for a while he kept that promise. David threw himself into work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He arrived early, stayed late, volunteered for projects nobody wanted. Within 6 months, his boss called him into the office. Mensa, you're good, really good. I'm promoting you to senior accountant, 20% salary increase. You've earned it. David came home that evening and picked Sandra up, spinning her around despite her protests about being too heavy after the baby. We're moving up. I told you things would change. Sandra laughed, holding Amma between them. I never doubted you. But something small shifted in that moment. Something Sandra didn't notice. When David said, I told you, there was no mention of we. No acknowledgement of the woman who'd fed him when he was starving, who'd believed in him when he'd stopped believing in himself. It was just, I. The promotions kept coming. Senior accountant became assistant manager, became manager. Each promotion brought more money, and more money meant they could finally leave Nima. They moved to a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Dansoman. Nothing fancy, but it had their own bathroom, their own kitchen, windows that let in actual sunlight. Sandra cried when she saw it. We have a living room, David. A whole room just for living. This is just the beginning, David said, but he was looking at his phone, scrolling through messages from his new colleagues. Wait until I make senior manager. We'll move to East Legon, the real money neighborhoods. I don't need East Legon. This is perfect. He glanced at her and something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been disappointment. You always say that. This is perfect. This is enough. Don't you want more? I want us to be happy. We can be happy and successful, Sandra. His voice had an edge, impatience. Stop thinking so small. She didn't know how to respond to that. When had wanting happiness become thinking small? David's new position meant company events, dinners with clients, cocktail parties with senior management. The first time he invited Sandra, she was excited. She bought a new dress from the market, did her hair in beautiful braids, put on the lipstick her friend Akosua had given her. When David came home and saw her, his smile faltered. What? Sandra touched her face. Is something wrong? No, you look nice. But his eyes traveled down her body, and she saw it. Judgment. Quick, but there. Maybe wear the black dress instead. This one is a bit tight. Sandra looked down. The dress fit perfectly. Tight how? Just, never mind. You look fine. Let's go. But the damage was done. All evening at the cocktail party, Sandra felt self-conscious. She noticed how the other wives looked. Slim, polished, designer dresses that probably cost more than her monthly salary. They smiled at her, those tight professional smiles that didn't reach the eyes. So you're David's wife? One woman said, looking her up and down. How lovely. David's told us so much about his journey, self-made man and all that. Self-made. Sandra's stomach twisted. She glanced at David across the room, laughing with his boss. He didn't correct the woman. Didn't say, actually, my wife made me. He just smiled and accepted the praise like it was his due. On the drive home, Sandra said quietly, You didn't tell them. Tell them what? About me. About how we met. How I helped you when you had nothing. David's jaw tightened. What was I supposed to say? Hey, everyone, I used to be so pathetic I couldn't feed myself, and my fat wife had to rescue me. That's not exactly professional networking material, Sandra. Fat. The word hung in the air like poison. He'd never called her that before, not once in 4 years of marriage. I'm sorry, David said immediately, seeing her face. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just stressed. Big account presentation tomorrow. Forgive me? Sandra nodded, but something cold settled in her chest. A warning. A whisper that said, "This is just the beginning." A year later, Sandra got pregnant again. David's reaction was different this time. No tears of joy, no spinning her around. Just a calculated nod. Okay, we can afford it now. I'm making good money. Just maybe think about losing some of the baby weight after this one, for health reasons. For health reasons. As if concern for her health was what motivated the comment and not the way his colleagues' wives looked in their fitted dresses. Their son Kwame was born on a rainy Tuesday morning. David was in a meeting and arrived at the hospital 3 hours late, still wearing his suit, smelling of cologne and conference rooms. Sorry. The client presentation ran long. He kissed Sandra's forehead, then looked at the baby with genuine affection. A son. That's perfect. Amma needs a little brother. You missed the birth, David. I said I was sorry. What do you want me to do? Turn back time? Irritation crept into his voice. I'm working my ass off for this family. Someone has to pay the bills. Sandra bit back her response. She was working too. Still waking at 4:30, though now to prepare the children for school before her hospital shift. Still bringing home her salary. But somehow, in David's mind, his work counted more. The comments about her weight started slowly, almost casual. Sandra, maybe skip the rice tonight. You've been complaining about your clothes being tight. You're sweating again. You know, exercise might help with that. I saw this article about health risks for overweight women, just something to think about. Each comment was a small cut. Individually, they seemed almost caring. Together, they bled her dry. One evening, Sandra was cooking dinner when David came home with guests, 3 colleagues from work. She wasn't prepared. The house was messy. She was wearing old clothes, hair tied back, no makeup. Surprise, David called out. The guys wanted to see our place. Sandra, this is Kenneth, Michael, and you remember Jennifer from the party. Jennifer, the slim woman with the tight smile. She looked around their modest apartment with barely concealed disdain. How cozy, she said, which clearly meant how small. Sandra tried to smile, painfully aware of how she must look, sweaty, disheveled, domestic. I'll make some tea. Give me a moment to... Don't worry about tea, David said quickly. Too quickly. We won't be long, just showing them around. But as they toured the apartment, Sandra heard David laughing in the bedroom, heard Jennifer's voice. David, you're such a catch. How did you end up? The sentence trailed off, but Sandra knew how it ended. How did you end up with her? And David's response, well, you know, different times, different circumstances. Things change. Things change, as if their love was just a circumstance, as if she was a phase he'd outgrown. After they left, Sandra confronted him. What did you mean, things change? Jesus, Sandra, don't be paranoid. I'm not paranoid. I heard what Jennifer said, and you didn't defend me. What was I supposed to say? David's voice rose, frustration boiling over. She's right. Look at yourself. Look at this place. I'm a senior manager now. I eat lunch with directors. I close million CD deals. And I come home to... this. To your family. To a wife who's let herself go. The words exploded out of him. There, I said it. You're fat, Sandra. You've gained so much weight you can barely fit into your own clothes. You sweat constantly. You dress like someone's grandmother. How am I supposed to take you to company events when you look like that? Sandra felt like she'd been slapped. I've gained weight because I had 2 children. Your children. Because I work full-time and take care of this house and still wake up early to make sure everyone eats. When exactly am I supposed to find time for the gym? Other women manage. Other women have help. Other women have husbands who come home at reasonable hours and help with the children. Her voice broke. I do everything, David. Everything. And you're standing here criticizing how I look while doing it? Oh, here we go. Saint Sandra, the martyr. David grabbed his car keys. I'm going out. Don't wait up. Where are you going? Anywhere that isn't here. The door slammed. The children, awakened by the shouting, started crying. Sandra stood in her messy kitchen, surrounded by unwashed dishes and unfolded laundry and the ruins of her marriage, and wondered when exactly love had turned to disgust. She walked to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. She had gained weight. Her face was rounder, her arms were bigger, her stomach soft from 2 pregnancies, but her eyes were what stopped her. They looked tired, so tired. She touched the gold bracelet on her wrist, her grandmother's bracelet. Make sure he remembers what she sacrificed, her mother had said. Make sure he never forgets. But David had forgotten. Or worse, he remembered and didn't care. That night, Sandra made a decision. She would try harder. She would lose weight. She would dress better. She would become the wife David wanted, the wife he could be proud of. Because the alternative, accepting that her marriage was dying, was too terrifying to consider. She didn't know yet that trying harder would only make things worse, that you can't earn love from someone who's decided you're not worth loving, that some men forget where they came from the moment they arrive somewhere better. David came home at 3 a.m., smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. The affair started 6 months after that night. Or maybe it had started before, and Sandra just finally found the evidence. A receipt in David's pocket for a hotel room in Lebone. Dinner for 2 at a restaurant they'd never been to together. Charges on the credit card she wasn't supposed to see. She confronted him on a Thursday evening. The children were at her mother's house for the weekend. It was just the 2 of them in their East Legan house, the one David had finally bought after making senior manager. 4 bedrooms, marble floors, a house that should have meant they'd made it. Who is she? Sandra held up the receipt, her hand surprisingly steady. David didn't even try to deny it. Her name is Naomi. She works in corporate communications. The casualness of his admission was worse than any lie, like he'd been waiting for this moment, like part of him wanted to be caught. How long? Does it matter? How long? David sighed, loosening his tie. 8 months, maybe 9. I don't know, Sandra. I stopped counting. 8 months, almost a year of lies, of him coming home late, of perfume on his collar, of business trips that probably weren't business at all. Why? Her voice cracked. Not steady anymore, breaking apart like glass under pressure. Because she makes me feel alive, David's composure shattered. She's beautiful. She's exciting. She actually takes care of herself. When I'm with her, I don't feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I'm... He trailed off. Like you're what? Like I'm the man I was supposed to be. Not the man who married the first woman who showed him kindness when he was desperate. There it was, the truth beneath all the cruelty. Sandra hadn't been his choice. She'd been his only option, and now that he had options, she was disposable. I saved your life, Sandra whispered. I gave you everything. And I've paid you back 10 times over, David shouted. This house, the cars, private school for the kids. You haven't had to sell porridge in years. I've given you everything money can buy. What more do you want? I want you to love me, like you used to, before money made you forget who you were. I haven't forgotten who I was. That's the problem. David's face twisted with something ugly. Resentment. Years of it, festering beneath the surface. I was a man eating from charity, sleeping on couches, being pitied by a woman who felt sorry for me. Do you know how that felt? Do you know what it did to my pride every single day? So you hate me for helping you. I hate that I needed you. The words exploded out of him, raw and honest and devastating. I hate that every time I look at you, I remember being weak, being nothing. You're a walking reminder of the worst time of my life, Sandra, and I can't keep living with that reminder. Sandra felt something die inside her, the last ember of hope. So what now? I want a divorce. No. Sandra's voice turned to steel, cold, hard, final. You don't get to throw me away after I built you. These children need their mother. The children will be fine. They'll stay with me. You can visit on weekends. Visit my own children. They're better off with me. I can provide stability. What can you provide? You're a nurse's assistant, Sandra. You barely make enough to rent a room in Nima. I was a nurse's assistant when I fed you, when you were starving. Or have you forgotten that too? David's face went red. Get out! This is my house too. No, it's my house, my name on the deed, my money that bought it. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Get out! David, please, the children. We'll have a better mother. Naomi loves them already. She'll move in next week. The world tilted. Next week? You've already planned this? You've already chosen her over us. I chose myself, Sandra. For once in my miserable life, I'm choosing what I want, not what I need, not what circumstance forced on me. What I want. He dragged her toward the door. And I don't want you. Sandra tried to resist, but David was stronger, angrier. He opened the front door and pushed her onto the porch. Her hip hit the railing. Pain shot through her side. My things. He threw a bag at her feet. One small bag. That's all you need. The rest stays here. David, please, I have nowhere to go. Should have thought of that before you became such a burden. He started to close the door, then paused. One last cruelty. One final knife twist. You know what the saddest part is? I look at you and I can't even remember why I married you. You're just nothing special. Never were. The door slammed. The lock clicked. Sandra stood on the porch of the house she'd helped build, holding a single bag, her grandmother's bracelet cold against her wrist. She had 50 CDs in her pocket. No plan, no place to stay. Her phone rang. David sending a text. Don't try to come back. I've changed the locks. And don't even think about the children. My lawyers will destroy you. Sandra sat down on the porch steps and finally let herself break. She sobbed until her throat was raw, until her chest ached, until there were no tears left. Then she stood up, picked up her bag, and walked away from the life she'd built for a man who'd forgotten her worth. She went to her friend Akoswa's house in Dansoman. Akoswa opened the door, took one look at Sandra's face, and pulled her inside without questions. How long can I stay? Sandra whispered. As long as you need. Akoswa held her tight. What happened? He chose her. He threw me out. He took my children. Each sentence was a gasp between sobs. Akosua, I have nothing. I am nothing. Stop. Look at me. Akosua grabbed Sandra's face. You are not nothing. That man is nothing. He forgot where he came from. But you're a survivor. You built him once. Now you're going to build yourself. How? I barely make enough to... Then we make you make more. Akosua's eyes were fierce, determined. My friend works at the hospital administration. They're looking for a nursing supervisor. Better pay, better hours. You're going to apply. I'm not qualified. You have 10 years of experience and everyone at that hospital loves you. You're more than qualified. Akosua squeezed her hands. Sandra, listen to me. You are going to survive this. You are going to rebuild. And one day, that man is going to regret every single word he said to you. Over the next 6 months, Sandra did exactly that. She got the supervisor position. The pay was almost double what she'd been making. She enrolled in evening classes for healthcare administration. She saw her children every other weekend when David's lawyer finally agreed to visitation, and she made every second count. Amma would cry when visits ended. Why can't we live with you, Mommy? Soon, baby. Soon Mommy will have a place big enough for all of us. I don't like Auntie Naomi. She's mean. Sandra's heart ached, but she stayed strong. Just be patient. Be good. I'm working on it. Meanwhile, David's perfect life was cracking. Naomi wasn't the dream woman he'd imagined. She was expensive, demanding, cruel to the children when David wasn't looking. She spent his money like water, buying designer bags and booking spa weekends. David, I need 5,000 cedis for a new wardrobe, she'd say. Not ask. Say, like it was his obligation. 5,000 for clothes. Don't be cheap. You want me to look good, don't you? Or should I start dressing like your fat ex-wife? David would give her the money, because the alternative was admitting he'd made a mistake, and his pride wouldn't allow that. But work was getting harder. His boss noticed the distraction, the missed deadlines, the half-finished reports. Mensa, what's going on? You used to be my best manager. Now I can't rely on you. Personal issues. I'm handling it. Handle it faster. The board is watching. At home, Naomi grew bolder. She'd invite her friends over, and they'd drink expensive wine and laugh about David behind his back. He heard them once, standing outside his own living room. "Girl, how long are you going to stay with him?" one friend asked. "Until I find someone better," Naomi replied. "He's boring. Old. But the money is good. What about those kids? Ugh, don't remind me. They're so attached to their real mother, always crying for her. It's pathetic." David's hands clenched into fists. But he said nothing, because saying something meant admitting he'd destroyed his family for a woman who was using him, and he couldn't face that truth. The final blow came on a Saturday night. David came home early from a business dinner, hoping to surprise Naomi. Maybe take her out. Maybe recapture whatever spark he'd convinced himself they had. He found her in their bedroom. Their bedroom. With another man, younger, better looking, wearing David's robe. Naomi. His voice was dead, empty. She didn't even look ashamed, just annoyed. "You're home early. Who is this?" The man stood up, uncomfortable. "Look, man, I didn't know she was serious with anyone. Get out." David's voice was so quiet it was terrifying. "Both of you, get out of my house." Naomi laughed, actually laughed. "Your house? Please. Without me, you're just a middle-aged man with 2 whiny kids and an ex-wife you treated like trash." She grabbed her purse. "You want me to leave? Fine. Marcus here has a penthouse in Airport Residential. Much nicer than this place anyway. After everything I gave you gave me money, David. Not love, not respect, just money. And honestly, you're not even that rich." She stopped at the door, her smile cruel. "You know what's funny? You threw away a woman who actually loved you for a woman who never did. How stupid do you have to be?" They left. David stood in his empty house, children asleep upstairs, the scent of another man's cologne in his bedroom, and finally understood what he'd done. He'd traded unconditional love for conditional beauty, loyalty for lies. A woman who saw his potential for a woman who saw his bank account, and now he had nothing. Over the next year, everything fell apart. Work fired him after a major client complained about his performance. "We're letting you go, Mensa, effective immediately." Without his salary, he couldn't afford the house. The bank foreclosed. He had to move to a small apartment in Medina. The children were confused, angry. "Why can't we live in our big house? Where's Auntie Naomi? Why is everything changing?" David had no answers that didn't make him the villain. Meanwhile, Sandra was thriving. She'd been promoted again, now deputy director of nursing. She'd moved to a nice two-bedroom apartment. Not East Legon fancy, but comfortable, clean, filled with love. The children stayed with her most weekends now, and the difference was clear. They laughed more, smiled more. Amma stopped having nightmares. "Mommy, can we live with you?" Kwame asked one Sunday evening. "Soon, my love. I'm working on it." David knew he'd lost everything that mattered while chasing things that didn't. His pride kept him from reaching out for months. But finally, broke and desperate and alone, he went to Sandra's workplace. He waited outside Ridge Hospital, wearing cheap clothes, looking 10 years older than he was. When Sandra walked out in her administrative uniform, professional and confident and beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with size, he barely recognized her. "Sandra," she stopped. Her face went carefully blank. "David, can we talk, please? Just 5 minutes." She glanced at her watch. "I have a meeting. Make it quick." They sat on a bench outside the hospital. David couldn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry for everything. I was cruel. I was ungrateful. I was—" His voice broke. "I was wrong. About everything." "Yes, you were. Naomi left. My job fired me. I lost the house. I have nothing, Sandra. I'm back where I started. Maybe worse." He finally looked at her, tears streaming down his face. "I destroyed the best thing in my life because I forgot what mattered. Is there any way you can forgive me?" Sandra looked at this broken man who'd once been her whole world. She felt many things: pity, sadness, relief that she'd survived, but not love, that had died the night he threw her onto the porch. "I forgive you, David, not for you, for me, so I can stop carrying the weight of what you did. Can we try again? I'll be better. I'll remember." "No." Her voice was gentle but absolute. "You didn't just hurt me. You abandoned our children. You taught them that success means cruelty. That's not something you come back from. Please, Sandra, I have nowhere else to go. You had somewhere. You had a home. You had a family. You had a woman who would have died for you." She stood up. "But you threw it all away the moment you didn't need it anymore. That was your choice. Now live with it. I was nothing when you met me. I'm nothing again. Don't you see the irony? The irony, David, is that you were never nothing. You just thought you were." She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. "I saw potential in you when you were eating from charity. I saw a good man buried under desperation. But I was wrong. You weren't a good man waiting to emerge. You were a proud man waiting for revenge. Revenge for what? For needing me. For owing me. For being reminded every time you looked at me that you weren't always successful." Her voice was sad but clear. "You didn't fall out of love with me because I gained weight, David. You resented me because I saw you at your lowest, and your ego couldn't forgive that." David opened his mouth, but no words came. Because she was right. "The children stay with me now," Sandra continued. "The courts agreed. You can visit every other weekend. I won't keep them from you. But David, don't ever come here asking me to save you again. I did that once. It almost destroyed me. I won't make that mistake twice." She walked toward her car, then turned back one last time. "You know what I learned from all this? That I never needed you to be strong. I was always strong. I just chose to use my strength to lift you up. You chose to use yours to tear me down. That's the difference between us." She drove away, leaving David sitting on that bench, finally understanding what karma meant. It wasn't punishment from above. It was simply the natural consequence of forgetting who helped you climb when you were still on the ground. 5 years later, Sandra was director of nursing at Ridge Hospital. Her children were happy, healthy, thriving. She'd even started dating again, a gentle doctor who loved her curves and her laugh and the way she hummed while cooking. David worked as a junior accountant at a small firm. He'd clawed his way back from rock bottom, but never to the heights he'd once reached. He saw his children twice a month. They were polite but distant. He'd lost their trust along with everything else. One day he saw Sandra at a hospital fundraiser. She was giving a speech about healthcare access for low-income families, her voice strong and passionate. She looked radiant. He realized with a sharp pang that he'd never really seen her. Not when she was feeding him. Not when she was building him. He'd only seen what she could do for him, never who she was. After the speech, he approached carefully. "Sandra, you were brilliant up there." "Thank you." Polite. Nothing more. "The kids tell me you're happy. I'm glad." "I am." She smiled, and it didn't include him. "I'm finally building something that can't be taken away." "Myself." David nodded. "For what it's worth, I tell my story sometimes. To young men I mentor. About how I was saved by a woman I didn't deserve, and how my pride destroyed everything. I make sure they understand, make sure they don't repeat my mistakes." "That's good, David. Maybe someone will learn from your lessons, even if you learned them too late." She walked away, surrounded by friends and colleagues and people who valued her. And David understood finally, completely, that some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. That karma isn't about punishment. It's about mirrors. He'd mocked his wife for being fat, for being less than his success. And karma taught him the hardest lesson, that the weight that mattered was never on her body. It was the weight of regret he'd carry forever, knowing he'd destroyed the only person who'd ever loved him when he was nothing.